Tracy Lauren Marrow was only in his mid-20s, but he had already lived 1,000 lifetimes. He was born in the East, Newark, New Jersey to be exact. But the loss of his parents to heart attacks, first his mom when he was 9 years old, then his dad when he was 13, resulted in him moving to stay with his relatives in the West, South Central Los Angeles to be exact. There, as a high school student at Crenshaw High School, he was exposed to the emerging gangs that were the Bloods and the Crips. Although he identified with the Crips, Marrow was a unifier, not a fighter, so he preferred to deliver poetry to cool down the tempers of both camps. They were rhymes primarily inspired by Iceberg Slim, a pimp turned successful novelist. It was from Iceberg Slim that he got his stage name, combining the words ice with the initial of his first name. But Ice-T wasn't going to make a living as a poet. Whatever he had to do for a living, he had to do it quickly. His first child was on the way, and one can only stretch Social Security benefits from the death of one's father so far for so long. Ice stole and sold car stereos. He sold weed. He assisted in robbing banks. He had a brief spell in the army. He even tried pimping, but nothing seemed financially or emotionally sustainable. Maybe hip-hop would be different. Emerging around the time Ice-T was serving in the army, this cultural movement at the time had 4 viable points of entry: DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti writing. Graffiti was never an option. Although Ice tried breakdancing, DJing was turning out a lot better for him. That endeavor got him booked at nightclubs and parties around town as DJ Tracy. But it seemed that people preferred Ice-T to DJ Tracy, and Tracy Marrow had to resolve the conflict between his desires and the feedback he was receiving. As stated earlier, whatever he had to do for a living, he had to do it quickly. DJing might not have been bringing in a flood of dough, but a life of crime, as more lucrative as Ice-T saw it, was nevertheless not promising a happy ending. By the early 80s, 2 of his friends were in prison. One of them actually took the blame for Ice regarding stolen material. His refusal to snitch earned him 2 years. A life in entertainment or a life of crime? It was like being between a rock and a hard place. And that was the emotional state Ice-T was probably in on that day in a beauty parlor in 1982, with rollers in his hair, kicking to the ladies in attendance lyrics that sounded like a cross between the material of Rudy Ray Moore's Dolomite character and Red Fox. 2 men walked in, one being Willie Strong, the owner of Saturn Records, and the other being Cletus Anderson, the owner of the VIP record store on which Snoop Doggy Dogg would strut in the Who Am I, What's My Name music video about a decade later. The former asked a question that would change the course of Ice-T's life. Hey, wanna make a record? It was in the studio of VIP Records where Ice-T laid down the vocals for his first record, The Coldest Rap. The track on which he recorded was an electro-pop instrumental, helmed, in addition to an Oberheim OBX synthesizer, from the keyboard playing of Jimmy Jam and the bass guitar of Terry Lewis, 2 men who would go on to be a successful production and songwriting duo, most notable for their work with Janet Jackson by the end of the 80s. Released in 1983 on Saturn Records, The Coldest Rap was a smidge too far for its time.
I put her in the bed and she looked up in the mirror, screamed so loud I think the East Coast could hear.
This just might be the first description of sex in a rap song, as well as some of the first mentions of words that would become ubiquitous in rap lyrics. If the popularity of The Coldest Rap didn't totally convince Ice-T that he should get his life in order, a car accident did. In the hospital as a John Doe because he had no identification on him for fear of being pinned to his criminal activities, Ice must have thought the following words, which he rapped in 1993's That's How I'm Living.
This is getting old.
But he still needed to make money. According to Ice-T, he pocketed around $200 or $300 for The Coldest Rap. Decent for 83, but far from great. So he kept recording and kept getting big breaks. He made his film debut as a rap talker. The term rapper didn't exist then. In 1984's Breakin', one of the several hip-hop or breakdance themed movies that came out in the early to mid-80s to cash in on the burgeoning subculture. He even got to record a song entitled Reckless, which ended up at the end of the movie soundtrack and was co-produced by Chris the Glove Taylor, who would later be known for his work with Dr. Dre. Ice-T was now getting paid.
So I was in the movie, and this guy named Chris Taylor, he asked him, he said, hey, why don't you let us make a song in this movie? And then we lucked up, they let us make a song, the album sold 5 million records, we got a royalty check. I was like, man, rhyme pays. It was like the first
Between
check I ever got
1983 and
legitimate
1986, Ice-T released 3 singles on 12-inch vinyl, but the last release would be the most notable one of them all. While in a club, he had overheard the thundering drum machine sounds and hard-edged lyrics of a rapper hailing from Philadelphia that went by the moniker Schoolie D. The name of the single? PSK. What does it mean? Self-released in 1985, Schoolie D's song covers the activities of the Parkside Killers, a gang with which he was affiliated. Although the gang was not mentioned in the song, the allusion is there with a breakdown of the song's acronym and subject matter: getting busy, getting paid, getting wild, and getting laid, with a smattering of curse words that made the Coldest rap sound like a nursery rhyme recited in grade school. Ice liked it, to the extent of including a B-side in his latest 12-inch single, Dog in the Wax, aka You Don't Quit Part 2, that mimicked PSK. PSK is often cited as the first gangster rap song, but an argument can be made for 6 in the Mornin to share credit with PSK, if not being the first one instead. 6 in the Mornin is more blunt and direct, fully exposing the most common elements of what will become known as gangster rap. It's a tapestry of different plot strands from one verse to the next, with the sole purpose of narrating the daily goings-on in his hood of South Central Los Angeles. Be it assaulting a woman in broad daylight while shooting dice, being pulled over by members of the Los Angeles Police Department, getting jailed, or exchanging gunfire with a rival crew, all of which starts with fleeing his home at 6 a.m. because the police were at his door, customary timing by the LAPD. He always ends each narration with a line that symbolizes acceptance of such occurrences. In addition, 6 in the Mornin thematically and topically sets Ice-T apart from his predecessors in a region that became identified with the flourishing of gangster rap. Some fans often quote Toddy T as an important antecedent, having released in 1985 Batter Ram, a song denouncing the heavy-handed tactics of the LAPD, symbolized with the invention of the namesake device used in neighborhood drug raids. But Batter Ram is an electro-pop-fueled protest song, a direct descendant of songs such as The Message, not a companion piece that's as stark, nihilistic, and fatalistic as PSK. In the mid-80s, Los Angeles was still on the throes of electropop, championed by collectives such as the World-Class Wrecking Crew, Uncle Jam's Army, and the LA Dream Team. But that was not the sound of the future. Hip-hop music in New York, where it was born, was beginning to mature out of its disco roots, breeding acts like Run DMC and LL Cool J, who preferred stripped-down booming beats with aggressively delivered raps, while others like the Fat Boys and Houdini went on a more melodic R&B flavored path. Schoolie D was a disciple of the former, a sound that would later fall under the wide umbrella of hardcore rap, and it's from this umbrella that gangster rap would spring forth. Despite the controversy over the subject matter, which went further with narrative brutality than any other song before it, the B-side to Doggin' on Wax was a success. 6 in the Mornin would convince English class enthusiast Ice Cube and world-class Wrecking Crew member Dr. Dre to write and produce a song that aspiring music mogul Eazy-E ended up recording, named Boys in the Hood, in 1987, using the same Schoolie D template that Ice-T had relied on.
Came with making that green. People always say, what the hell does that mean?
6 in the morning, police at my door. Fresh to D to squeak across my bathroom floor.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the freaks, clocking the dough.
Also joining Boys in the Hood in 1987 were King T and Mixmaster Spade with the Compton Posse with the B-side You Better Get Your Gun, which coincidentally was issued under the same techno hop records that handled Ice-T's popular B-side. But it was Ice-T, as the first one out the gate, who became the prototypical gangster rapper. And in a period when the term gangster rap didn't exist, that would come along later in the 80s and become widely used by the mid-90s, Ice-T preferred the term reality rap, a more accurate or humanizing description of his chronicles of the poverty, violence, and racial constraints of the urban black LA neighborhoods in which he had lived. Ice-T was on the verge of being the first rap star of the West Coast. He just needed one more thing to elevate him to that level. A few years prior, before he appeared in Breakin', Ice had crossed paths in a club with Madonna, who was on her way to becoming America's pop princess. She was signed to Sire, a record label owned by the Warner Music Group. It was only a matter of time before Ice became acquainted with Seymour Stein, who had co-founded Sire and was actually the executive who assigned Madonna to his label. Stein drew parallels between Ice-T and Bob Dylan, who was known for his thought-provoking approach to lyricism. Couple that level of flattery with hip-hop furthering its reach in the mainstream with breakthrough albums like the triple platinum Raising Hell by Run DMC, and that was enough to get Ice a record deal and issue his first album, Rhyme Pays, on July 28, 1987. And oh yeah, Ice-T would have a few words for the companies who missed their opportunity with him.
On Sire Records, not MCA. CBS Capital, cause they move too slow. Now Sire Warner Brothers. Clocks all the dough!
Rhyme Pays kicks off the proceedings nicely with a sensationalized spoken word biography about his early years and ascendancy in the rap game. Then the cinematic atmosphere cuts to the title track with the slamming drums and splicing of Black Sabbath's War Pigs as Ice-T struts with his boasting, 6 verses centered around his ability to rock the mic and get paid to do so. While Ice had worked with several producers and DJs before this album, he now had 2 mainstays. Hailing from the Bronx, New York, Charles Andre Glenn went by the stage name Africa Islam, an obvious influence from his tenure with the New York-based hip-hop organization Zulu Nation, then under the leadership of Africa Bambaataa. As a DJ and producing apprentice, he was close enough to the leader to earn the nickname Son of Bambaataa. When he went to LA on a tour, he became acquainted with Ice-T at Radio, the club where the latter emceed at, and he eventually became Ice-T's in-house producer when they formed Rhyme Syndicate Productions. Eric Garcia, with the stage name Evil E or Evil E the Great, was also, like Ice and Africa Islam, a transplant from the East. Hailing from Brooklyn, New York, Evil E had appeared alongside Ice-T in the 1985 movie Rappin', which acted as a companion piece to Breakin' from the previous year, and that association led to his job as Ice-T's DJ. With Africa Islam behind the boards and DJ Evil E behind the wheels of steel, Rhyme Pays was primed to emerge from the embers of electropop into a fresher, forward-looking music world. And that world includes 6 in the Mornin, which Africa Islam takes from the unknown DJ, who would become most famous for his work with Compton's Most Wanted, and spruces it up with kicks and snares that stomp and stab viciously. It can be orally overwhelming to those used to the comparatively milder original, but for those who appreciate an extended version, which continues the story with a cop chase and ends with the discovery of the grisly aftermath of another shootout, this time on the East Coast, coincidentally at 6 a.m., this might be the better overall representation of one of hip-hop's earliest gangster rap songs. Nowhere as nihilistic as 6 in the Mornin is the simply titled Pain, because here, Ice-T, spinning a first-person narrative as a self-styled neighborhood terror, is destined to be arrested someday and thrown in the clink for a decade. And that's exactly what happens, with each verse ending with the following bar.
It's always fun in the beginning, but it's pain.
In Squeeze the Trigger, Ice-T moves from the streets of LA to the White House in Washington, over a sinister synth-heavy beat. Ice-T says,
I rap about the life that the city streets gave me.
the urban black poor were not exactly big fans of then-President Ronald Reagan. He wasn't exactly the strongest proponent for strengthening or enforcing the civil rights gains of the 1960s. Various organizations have argued that Reagan's war on drugs legislation created racial disparities regarding sentencing for powder cocaine and crack cocaine, and detractors of his economic policies, collectively known as Reaganomics, and which included advocating for smaller government and a leveling off of government's domestic spending, argued that it widened the gap between the haves and the have-nots. A blossoming leftist, Ice-T lets off a flurry of bars against an administration that was often perceived as, at best, apathetic to the less fortunate of the United States, and, at worst, racially insensitive. Songs like Squeeze the Trigger, Pain, and 6 in the Mornin points to a more developed amalgam of hardcore rap and social-political ideology in Ice-T's professional future. In later albums, Ice would be a louder mouthpiece of the disenfranchised and downtrodden, announcing their plights for the entire country to hear and do something about it. But for then, in 1987, Sire thought it best to lead Rhyme Pays with the safest cuts. Make It Funky and Somebody Gotta Do It, Pimpin' Ain't Easy. One for the party, the other a novelty number. Both are fine, and rather toothless. Make It Funky has the standard James Brown samples to put it in vogue, as well as call and response chants that include shoutouts to 4 of New York's 5 boroughs as Ice's form of tribute to hip-hop's mecca. Unfortunately, the stomping grounds of the Wu-Tang are left out. Somebody Gotta Do It is also standard mid-80s fare, a perpetual stream of stupendous wealth and enviable convenience, warding off calls for an appearance on the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And a jab thrown at Ronnie.
Yo, Ice, it's Ronald Reagan, man. He wants to know, can he hang out with you and E? Man, will you tell that fool to get off my channel, man?
Who's willing to bet Ice didn't vote for him? Twice. Neither one of the singles made it on any Billboard chart. Could 409 have been a better choice? Ice-T self-edits the vulgarity in the song with a scoff or squeal. Plus, the song title is an interesting metaphor for cleaning, whether it's avoiding any blemishes on your Adidas or getting the wax out of your ears to fully enjoy the party vibes of the Rhyme Syndicate. But maybe the disparate and sporadic samples, which include Funk Inc., the Commodores, and one of the first samplings of Bob James's Nautilus, must have not seemed like a commercial slam dunk to Sire. And the sex numbers must have definitely been out of the question. I Love Ladies tries to disguise Ice-T's carnal pleasures as yet another party song, but the real fun is revealed in the 4th verse. Sure, his conquest pursued him, not the other way around, and she seems like she put him through the equivalent of a decathlon, but does it sound like he's complaining?
She was the best, y'all. Yes, on this earth. I would have paid $1 million. That's what it was worth.
Because on the next track, Sex, he's a satromaniac, letting loose in the last verse a scene that's still graphic even with its metaphors and implicitness. And if there's any doubt of Ice-T's sexual preference, he makes it clear in 409.
Guys grab a girl, girls grab a guy. If a guy wants a guy, please take it outside.
Stein reportedly took offense to that lyric, which many years later was discovered to be quite understandable. But overall, Rhyme Pays is tame compared to Ice-T's later releases, and more specifically, it has more filler than his next 3 albums, if we are to consider the CD version. Although the cassette and LP have 9 tracks, the CD gets 12-inch mixes of the album singles, the Sex instrumental, and our most requested record, which could have been included with the regular tracks. It's just a fun, vibe-propelled record, with Ice-T boasting about the awesomeness of the song and hyping up his DJ, and preceded by callers requesting that the duo play the record. Among the requesters is the king of pop himself, or someone who sounds like him.
Yo, what's up, request line?
Yes, this is Michael. I'd like to hear that new song by, Ice-T. I don't know the name of it, but, it's bad.
Ice-T is far from the potty mouth he would become in later releases, and the graphic detail of his raps would become more pronounced with the passage of time. But in 1987, Rhyme Pays was the most profane, high-profile rap album released up to that point. And at the time, the Parent Music Resource Center, formed 2 years earlier to increase the level of control parents had over their children's access to music, had suggested including a warning label on content that contained violence, drug-related activity, or sexual themes. Ice-T was notified that he needed such a sticker on his album, but the details of what the sticker should say or look like was still being worked out. They wouldn't be finalized until 1990. So Ice-T had the freedom to design one himself, the first rapper to be accorded that honor. And he did, with the then required words, explicit lyrics, parental advisory on it. Ice designed it, with a humorous twist of irony, in the shape of something that resembled a bullet or a condom. Ice-T would need all the publicity he could get to make this album a success, especially considering that this was the first rap release from Sire. Rhyme Pays peaked at number 93 on the Billboard 200 chart during the summer, selling tens of thousands of copies for the rest of the year, and eventually earning Ice-T a gold plaque by 1991, at the height of his popularity and creative powers. So Rhyme Pays was a success, although some people, in retrospect, might have a muted enthusiasm for it when placed next to Ice-T's best work. Ice had started out as a street poet who had to learn how to adapt his rhymes to the beat. While he improved over time, and he sounds strident in some songs, such as the internal rhyming scheme he displays in Pain, Ice has never been mentioned among rap's technical greats. And here, he sounds even less polished, often speeding up his flow, if there is one, and consequently muddling his enunciation. As for the production, Africa Islam opts to occasionally use a few strokes of samples and synths over the concrete drum machine kicks and snares. The board work is far from mediocre and fits some of the subject matter nicely, like the aforementioned 6 in the Morning and Squeeze the Trigger, but it's not overtly spectacular either, unlike the fuller sound of Ice's subsequent albums. With its sunny beaches, electropop, and of course Hollywood, the West Coast was largely ignored by the East as a fertile ground for serious rhyme spitters. That began to change with Ice-T's Rhyme Pays. With a promising storyteller and budding ideologist backed by cratering beats, Rhyme Pays, as the first successful rap album from the West, was the first major foundational block for California's future prominence with its own brand of hardcore rap. No more settling for a few $100s. Ice-T will continue to forge his path in the music industry with his sophomore album the following year, with a companion by his side that would prove to be priceless. Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you on the next video.